Welcome to Have More Babies. If you're a new parent, or maybe you're about to be, you definitely know that feeling. You're constantly trying to figure out all the risks, how to protect this tiny new person. It can be overwhelming. So today, we're just zeroing in on one specific thing. It's universally recommended part of that protective shield, the hepatitis B vaccine, the HPV shot given right at birth. And look, I get what you might be thinking. It's honestly the number one question we see people asking about this. You hear hepatitis B, you think, okay, shared needles, sex, stuff that seems, well, completely irrelevant to a newborn, right? You think, hold on, why does my baby, who's like hours old, need that vaccine? It feels off, maybe even unnecessary. But the research, the experts we looked at, they have this really strong counterpoint and a great analogy, actually. They say this vaccine, it's just non-negotiable. Think of it exactly like buckling your baby into their car seat before you even think about pulling away from the hospital. You protect them first against risks you know about and maybe risks you don't, because waiting, the consequences could be just awful.
That car seat analogy is perfect, yeah. Because we are talking about a risk you just can't see. This isn't just, a nice to have. The HPV vaccine given right at birth is globally seen as the absolute best way to stop the chronic, lifelong problems this infection can cause. So let's just quickly define the threat itself. HPV, it's a virus, attacks the liver pretty aggressively, actually, spreads through blood, certain body fluids. But what's really kind of fascinating and scary is how incredibly infectious it is. The sources we reviewed consistently cite HPV as being 100 times more infectious than HIV.
Wow. 100 times.
Yeah. Think about that. We hear about Ebola, yellow fever, how contagious they are, and rightly so. Well, HPV is right up there with them in terms of how easily it spreads. But here's the kicker. Unlike those other viruses that make you sick right away, HPV often just hides. It can sit there silently in the body for decades before any serious signs show up.
Okay, 100 times more infectious than HIV can hide for decades. Let's connect that back to a newborn baby, though, because that's the disconnect, right? How could a baby, just hours or days old, possibly run into this virus? We know adults usually get it through certain risky behaviors, but what about babies? What are their risks?
All right, so the number one immediate risk, the reason the birth dose is so critical and universal, is what doctors call vertical transmission. That just means it passes from the mother to the baby during the delivery process itself. That's the single biggest way a baby gets chronically infected.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting for me, based on what we read. This risk is real, even if the mom tested negative for Hep B during her pregnancy tests.
Exactly right. That's a crucial point. A mother might test negative early on, say in her first or second trimester screening, but she could potentially get infected later in the pregnancy, maybe in the third trimester, and it just wouldn't be picked up before she gives birth. If that happens, the baby's risk of getting infected during delivery goes way, way up. And since you can't realistically test every single mother the day before she delivers, well, the safest, most responsible medical approach is to assume exposure might happen and protect every single baby right away.
Got it. So the immediate universal dose is basically plugging that potential gap, the mom's unknown status, right at the moment of birth. But what about after they go home? This vaccine starts working right away, but you mentioned lifelong immunity. Are there risks at home too?
Yes, definitely. Once the baby's home, the concern shifts a bit to household contacts who might be chronic carriers and not even know it. We're talking about that silent spread again. Maybe a grandparent, an uncle, even an older sibling who has chronic hepatitis B but has no symptoms. They could accidentally transmit the virus. Think about tiny microscopic cuts or breaks in the skin, maybe sharing nail clippers without thinking, or a toothbrush accidentally gets used, or even just close contact if there's a tiny unnoticed bit of blood. That sounds unlikely, maybe, but it's a very real, invisible danger in the baby's immediate world.
That brings up something, though. You often hear about playground scrapes or kids biting each other in daycare as ways Hep B could spread later. But it sounds like you're saying those things, while maybe real risks later, aren't the main driver for this urgent birth dose.
That's a really good distinction to make, yes. The absolute primary justification for the dose within 24 hours is that immediate risk. It's the potential maternal transmission during birth and then exposure to those silent household carriers right after. The fact that the full vaccine series also protects them down the road from, those daycare bites or sharing toys or falling on the playground, that's a fantastic added benefit, a huge bonus of lifetime protection. But the urgency, the why now for that first shot, that's driven squarely by the risks present right around birth and in those first few weeks. And if we look at the bigger picture, the reason we react so strongly to potential HBV exposure in a newborn It's all about the outcome. See, if an adult gets hepatitis B, they usually fight it off. There's maybe only about a 5% chance, roughly, that it becomes a lifelong chronic infection.
Only 5% for adults. Okay,
Correct.
so what's the number for a baby infected at birth?
It flips completely. If a baby gets HBV at birth, or even in early childhood, the risk of it becoming a lifelong chronic infection jumps to as high as 90%.
90. Wow. 90% risk of it becoming chronic. Why such a huge difference?
It's down to their immune system. It's just immature. A newborn's body isn't really equipped yet to recognize and clear out the hepatitis B virus effectively, so it stays.
90% chronicity. That number is just staggering. So what does that actually mean for a child if they have this chronic infection growing up?
Yeah, it's not just, living with a virus. Chronic HBV infection is like a ticking time bomb inside the liver. It leads to really devastating, very well-documented problems down the line. And tragically, these complications kill hundreds of thousands of people globally every single year. Because the disease progresses silently, the liver's just getting damaged year after year, often with zero symptoms for decades. The three big, terrible outcomes we absolutely have to prevent are, first, severe scarring of the liver that's called cirrhosis.
Okay, cirrhosis.
Second, liver cancer, which is very often fatal.
Liver cancer.
And third, ultimately, liver failure, where the only option left is a transplant. So by giving that vaccine dose right at birth, we're essentially wiping out that 90% risk of these awful things happening decades later. It's a shield against future liver disease.
It comes back to that protection principle, doesn't it? You wouldn't wait for the house fire to buy insurance. You don't buy the car seat after the accident. And yeah, you definitely don't want to wait until someone's 30 and suddenly has liver damage to realize they got exposed as a tiny baby. So that brings us right to the timeline. Why does it have to be within the first 24 hours? Why so strict?
Right. There are basically three key reasons for that tight deadline, and they all circle back to giving the baby's immune system the best possible start. First, like we've been saying, it's immediate protection. It shuts down that critical window of risk right away, especially if the mother's status is unknown or if testing got missed somehow. The sooner it's in, the sooner the protection starts building. Second, it stops silent spread. Remember those unknown carriers in the house? This protects the baby immediately as they enter that environment, right from day one out of the hospital. And third, it ensures optimal immunity. Starting the vaccine series immediately, right after birth, seems to be the best way to build the strongest, most durable, long-term immunity. The immune system is sort of primed and ready right then. It builds a really solid foundation for the booster shots that come later.
And the sources are super clear on this, that standard first dose needs to be given within 24 hours of birth. No wiggle room, no exceptions. But you mentioned earlier, sometimes there's a sort of dual defense strategy used if the risk is known to be really high. Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. So if we know for sure that the mother is HBV positive, we have a confirmed test result, then that baby is facing an extremely high risk of infection during birth. In that specific scenario, the timeline gets even tighter. The baby needs to receive two different things, and they need them within the first 12 hours of life.
Okay, within 12 hours if mom is known positive. And those two things are the vaccine itself, plus something called HBIG. Hepatitis B immune globulin.
Correct, HBIG. And this is where you see the cleverness of the medical strategy. They work differently but together. The HBV vaccine, as we've discussed, is the long-term trainer. It shows a little piece of the virus to the baby's immune system, teaching it how to make its own antibodies over months and years. That's called active immunity. Long-lasting protection the body makes itself. HBIG, the immune globulin, is different. Think of it as an immediate but temporary bodyguard. It's basically a concentrated dose of pre-made antibodies collected from healthy donors who already have immunity. When you inject HBIG, it gives the baby passive immunity, ready-made protection right now.
Ah, okay. So if the baby might have actually encountered the live virus during birth, the HBIG is like the instant defense force soldiers already on the ground to neutralize it immediately, while the vaccine is simultaneously starting the process of training the baby's own internal army for lifelong defense.
That's a perfect way to put it. Exactly. The passive immunity from HBIG is that immediate, high-powered shield. It's designed to grab onto any virus particles floating around right after birth and stop them before they can ever set up shop and cause that chronic infection, the one with the 90% chance. And at the same time, the vaccine kicks off the process for the baby to build their own active, durable, lifelong protection. It's a really effective two-pronged attack against a very dangerous virus in a high-risk situation.
That dual strategy is fascinating. It really highlights the seriousness and the urgency. And the best part is, this approach, whether it's just the vaccine for all babies or the vaccine plus HBIG for high-risk babies, it really works, doesn't it?
Oh, it's incredibly effective. The data shows that more than 95% of babies who get the birth dose and then complete the full vaccine series, which usually means more shots around 1 to 2 months, and then again between 6 and 18 months, are fully protected for life. It's honestly one of the biggest success stories in modern preventative medicine. We've essentially turned what could be a near certain path to chronic liver disease, cancer, or failure for an exposed newborn into a lifetime of health for the vast majority. So maybe this raises an important question for you, listening now. When you're faced with a virus, an invisible threat that's 100 times more contagious than HIV, and you have a proven medical defense right here that offers over 95% chance of lifetime protection against liver cancer and failure, well, the choice seems pretty clear, doesn't it? That birth dose really is one of those powerful shields modern medicine can give your child right from the start.
So what's the bottom line here for you as you're maybe getting ready for this huge life change? Or maybe you're right in the middle of it. The risk of hepatitis B might not feel real or visible in your immediate circle today. But the whole point of this universal vaccine at birth is to guard against those unknowns. The missed test result, the relative who's a carrier and doesn't know it. It protects right when that risk, however small it seems, is actually at its highest for lifelong consequences. It really is like that seatbelt. You hope you never need it, but you will be so incredibly grateful you fastened it before the journey ever began. Now, for more really specific details like the full vaccination schedule, the exact timing for that birth dose, and just generally protecting your newest family member, we definitely suggest checking out the resources we used. We found the information over at omegapediatrics.com to be incredibly helpful and clear on this specific topic. They lay out the dosing schedule and everything. So we really encourage you to visit omegapediatrics.com right now. Again, that's omegapediatrics.com for those comprehensive details.
And, if this conversation helped clarify things for you, maybe helped you understand why that first shot is so important, or the difference between the vaccine and HBIG, please do give this a like, subscribe to the channel if you want more information like this, and definitely share this with other parents, friends, anyone who might be wrestling with these same questions.
Thank you so much for joining us and learning along with us today. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep protecting those precious little ones.
Yeah, knowledge is great, but it's most powerful when you understand it deeply and then actually use it.